Hey, I'm Finn. I just wanted to do a follow-up video to the other one I did, which was about the traits of adult children of alcoholics or adult children of dysfunctional homes. Um, I had said there was 13 traits that had come from a list called the Laundry List, written by Tony A. I don't know his last name, but you only have to write laundry list into Google and maybe write laundry list adult children of alcoholics and it will come up. So in the last one I mentioned four. The four that I mentioned were isolating yourself, so characteristic of becoming isolated, a characteristic which develops, which is addicted to excitement or drama. Another one was judging yourself harshly, which is in line with perfectionism. And the fourth one that I mentioned was being frightened of angry people. And I also said, avoiding conflict. So that was in my other video. The four I want to mention today are another four. And they're, of course, you'll resonate often with most on the list if you've grown up in a home, or you may resonate with more than others. So the one that I was going to mention today is wanting to rescue people. So this desire and this need to rescue or save people who you feel need saving. And this is a really common one for me, and I've always been sort of somewhat attracted, I don't just mean, relationship-wise, but to situations where I feel like I need to save somebody, or I see that someone's in trouble and I have a deep need or desire to have to go fix that problem for them or that situation. And if you, I'll just give some examples in my life. It may make you have a look at some in your own. You may not relate to the ones in mine. That's completely fine, because our lives are different. So how we've been brought up, there'll be different situations or circumstances that occurred, but at the end of the day, the underlying characteristic of wanting to save somebody or being a rescuer probably is there. So for me, I often found situations where I had some few ones even as a kid. I don't know why it was always me, but twice I sort of was so aware of my environment that I once saw a girl in a public pool struggling, and it's like nobody else noticed. I saw her, I thought, oh God, here I am, I'm gonna have to save her. I was only the same age. I always seemed to sort of have a lookout for people who were struggling, and it really tugged at me. I always felt like it was my responsibility to save them. Of course I helped her, I wasn't gonna let her drown, but that's an extreme example, and that's an obvious example. Sometimes in relationships, we're attracted to people who may also have an alcohol or drug problem, or they're in a situation that's, there's a lot of drama in their life, or they're unwell, they're sick. And I'm not saying it's anything bad about actually being with these people, but it's whether you're looking at yourself and understanding, am I feeling a need that I have to actually save this person from their life, and that you're somehow going to rescue them. And a lot of it comes out of a deep desire. It's very subconscious to relive your life, the experience that you had with your parent, and in saving this other person, it's like you're going back in a way and saving the person you couldn't save, particularly if you have a family member who actually has passed away or has died from their addiction, or still lives a life and is slowly dying from addiction. It is just it's really deep, and it's such a subconscious thing. It's like you're trying to always save that person through saving others, and it's almost this real heightened sense for struggle. I mentioned in another video about characteristics, good traits that come from growing up in dysfunctional homes, and one was compassion and empathy. And this sort of crosses over a bit, because I often have a deep, feeling of responsibility and compassion to people who are struggling. But the line stops at what point do you keep you know, you end and they begin. That's the boundary thing. Like, especially helping people when they haven't asked. And that's another thing. I know people who their boundaries can get that iffy that it can actually be quite insulting to go in and actually try and help people who haven't actually asked for your help. And all along you can think you're doing a favour, and you may be surprised that they're actually quite offended or resistant to your assistance. And the question is that you would be too if someone came in and tried to take over your life and or, you know, direct you to do something without you having asked them. So, I mean, a lot of that stemmed up in that too, and it's very subconscious. We can do these things without even realise we're doing them. So it's one to watch out for, and maybe to question whether you do that a bit, whether you're attracted to situations and people that you feel like you need to save or rescue. Another one is living life as a victim. So, funny one, and it always has this negative connotation, like to be a victim, but the reality was, growing up in an environment that you had no control of, you were a victim. So there needs to be that acknowledgement first that you were a victim to your circumstances. For many years there, you had no control. You just don't. You know, a 5-year-old's not going to run out the door and piss off forever. And I mean, kudos to them if they could. Like, I mean, I really, for some kids who have, I think that are empowered enough at a really young age to just know they don't want something, that's amazing. Like, but for the most of us, we put up and because we don't know any different, we think this is how we're supposed to live, or this is what every other family is living through. So living as a victim, where this comes in is at one point you did live as a victim. And this is again where you've got to move a bit into self-awareness and self-growth to get that there's a point where you've got to stop being a victim. And the way it often shows itself, and I very much have lived in this, often it's about, like, it's a fear of the world. You can often look at the world as a scary place. That's a part of being a victim a bit too. And it can be taken so far as what I mentioned before about the personality traits of the character disordered person and the neurotic. And I said the character disordered person doesn't want to take responsibility. And sometimes being a victim can fall into this world of blaming the world for your problems. And that's how living as a victim can kind of move into that, where you act powerless or you become powerless. You always do have power. The fact is, you can do anything in this life that you want, and you can change things, but you move into a zone of acting out of powerlessness, and thus you live life as a victim. And the only difference in it is a change of attitude, and it starts in your mind. And again, I always go back to, it starts with looking at yourself, going in, doing a lot of reading, doing a lot of self-work, and getting to a point and acceptance and acknowledgement that maybe you are living from a space of being a victim. So that's a big one. It's quite common in adult children of alcoholics. They may end up in situations where they are living with domestic violence. They don't, they may end up in situations where they're bullied at work. And again, it gets all tied into self-worth. And I don't throw these things around like, you should be, you need to be this way and you can be like this way tomorrow. It is a journey. It's not something that's just going to happen tomorrow. But awareness is the key. So if you're not willing to actually look at yourself, then you can't expect things to resolve. It's idiotic. I mean, the fact, if you really believe that the world is going to change for you without you doing anything on yourself, or you want the world, your outside world, to change without you changing at all, then, I just don't feel sorry for you. The fact is, you've got to actually go in and start to do the work on yourself and know that you want something more for your life. And you really, 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 the biggest thing is you've got to be honest with yourself. And if you can be honest with yourself, there's nothing to be scared of then, because it's just the only way is forward. So that is one. Living as a victim is a huge one, and we've all probably had parts of that, certainly. I mean, like I said, there was one point you were a victim. So you can own that part and know that though it finishes, one part of your life finishes, and you need to move on to the next, where you don't come from a place of being a victim. The other one is having more concern for others than yourself. So this is, again, a bit tied up in this wanting to rescue people and save people. I, however, think there's a deeper part of this, which is it's easier to care for others than it is to yourself. And of course, like the reason being, if you don't have very good worth and slash self-esteem, why would you care for yourself? You don't feel that you're worthy of being cared for. So it is easy to look out at other people and feel the need to care for them, and to the point that you'd cease to care for yourself on any level, maybe mentally, emotionally, physically. Your diet's terrible, you don't exercise, you don't look after your health, your emotional health's terrible, you're depressed, you're highly anxious, but even so, you're still trudging through and you're taking care of your immediate environment. You might be taking care of your kids or another family member. You may, give a lot to your friends, but you're deep down, there is not a lot of self-care going on there for you. And at the end of the day, that's something that's not going to go anywhere. So the only way it's going to go is down. So that is a huge one for people that have grown up in alcoholic environments and dysfunctional environments, because again, I'll always come back to this. You lived in an environment like I did where someone else's life really was the prime focus. You may have gotten the necessities, okay? You maybe got fed and got to bed and bathed, and you may not have either, and there's a lot of tragedy in these sort of things too, right? You weren't even actually taken care on a physical level. Your emotional needs may have been met a bit, maybe not at all. So the fact is, somebody else was getting all of this attention. So one of your parents or family members everything was on them. I was just like, they're the person, it's like a vortex. Everything gets sucked into blah blah's world. So self-worth is the number one thing in that. So self-care, clearly you've never really known how important or how worthy you are of self-care. So that's one thing that I think people need to watch out for, because you're not going to have a very good life if you don't care for yourself. I mean, apart from the fact that you may be physically ill, emotionally you may be very unstable and you not be having a happy life. So it is literally, I'd actually place as number one. So on anything, you have to start caring about yourself, because everything else actually comes underneath that. Assertiveness, becoming, all the other things actually drift away a little bit once you actually put your prime importance on self-care. And it's probably one of the hardest because you're not used to it, but it's absolutely crucial. It's number one. The fourth one I'm going to mention today is that a lot of people who've grown up in alcoholic homes or adult children of alcoholics and or dysfunctional environments, and I'm talking particularly here about growing up in drug addiction or alcoholism, is that you marry someone who is an alcoholic, and or you date people who are alcoholics, or you may become an alcoholic yourself. So really, really, really common. In fact, they throw around figures like 80% of women who grew up in an alcoholic home marry an alcoholic man, and boys marry women who are alcoholics, and it's just, or they become alcoholics themselves. And it's just like, it's so obvious that would happen. I mean, it's, again, like I've mentioned, it's because it's familiar to you. So you know how to deal with an alcoholic. I mean, it's something you've learnt to do. I mean, here's the thing, you're probably very good at it. I was too. Like, it's not to take away the skills you've learnt. You're probably very good at dealing with alcoholics. The thing is, do you really want to go through the trauma of living with one again? And for me, my answer is, fuck no. Like, I don't want them in my life. So that's the stand I take. But the thing is, it's not as simple as that, of course, because I've actually gone through periods where I dated people who, I used to like people who had not so much alcohol, but, the stoners, or people who were into drugs, but nothing excessive, but they were just sort of not, what it was actually more than being an alcoholic or a drug addict was actually they were emotionally not present. So I was always attracted to people who wouldn't give me their time, because that's what I was used to. And so that's what you need to look at, is that it may not actually be that they're an alcoholic or drug addict, but they're emotionally not present, just like your parent wasn't for you. And that's what you're used to. You prefer it that way. It's comfortable. In fact, you find it odd if someone was to give you attention, and it may feel odd. And for a long time, I didn't like that. I'd prefer to be with someone who didn't, because that was normal to me, and someone who actually wanted to spend time with me pissed me off. I'm not like that anymore. That's taken a lot of work. And again, that's come from self-worth, because I believe I'm bloody awesome, and people would, someone would want to hang around me, and that's the place you've got to get to, is actually that you care for yourself that much that you deserve to have people who do want to spend time with you and actually are emotionally present for you. So again, 4 out of the 13. So I'll mention again that you care more for others than you care for yourself, that you live life as a victim, that you may marry an alcoholic or drug addict, and or you might become one yourself. So you need to watch out for those ones. You may already have that in your life. So again, it's something self-work. And 4th one was the feeling the need to rescue and save people and finding yourself in situations where you constantly end up doing this. So again, I don't throw it out there like I'm an expert in it. I'm an expert in having lived with alcoholism, and certainly just as you'd be, it's more that I can only come from a place of the things I've experienced, and I always, we always fall back into these traits. They're things that are, I'd be like a roller coaster. They may be in and out of our lives at some point, and at some points right now for you it might be absolutely extreme, that you actually can see that you're living these things 100%. And I'll always come back to the fact that you need to start looking inside yourself, and that comes from getting to the world of self-development, reading things. If you don't already attend Al-Anon and you're old enough to do so, I mean, I think any age, or Alateen, go there. Just open your world to self-development and know that you're not stuck in anything. Who you know yourself to be is like, literally like 1/1,000,000th of a fraction of who you could be. And this is what I'm mostly passionate about, is just that you can be anybody you want to be in this world. Your past is your past, and it takes practice. That's the thing. It's a practice to start to get that you don't relive out your past, but that you actually create a future of just from nothingness, that you can literally create a whole new life for yourself. And that's what I stand for, and that's why I'm so big on people doing self-development, so that you can slowly get to a point of self-worth in which you'll act, and to create a future that's worthy of a future for you. That's the thing, it's worthy for you. I may do another video to do the other 4, so that would make it 12. There's one more hanging out there. I probably touched on them here and there, but yeah, so until next time, again, if you had any insights, share it below. I'll write back to you. Otherwise, I'll speak to you soon. Bye.